Hi there and welcome to my vocal trance production course with Sonic Academy. My name's Craig Connelly. What I want to talk to you about in this brief 30-minute video is a very quick overview of my process when making a vocal trance record. It's going to be almost like a double explanation. There's going to be two tracks we're looking at. The first one being the very rough demo that's sent to the vocalist, and then the second one's going to be the main production. So the way I approach making a vocal track is I always start with a super rough demo. I just throw all my musical ideas onto the screen via the MIDI keyboard without thinking too much about what the initial sound selection is going to be. I focus more on my detailed, dedicated sound selection later. But first thing I will do is start to playing my chords and melodies and whatever ideas come to mind. This particular track was written in the key of C minor, but that's relative major to E flat major, and I do this in quite a lot in my tracks where I'll switch from one chord sequence to the next. So for example, the opening chords here, these are the verse chords which I'll play for you now. So that's four very basic chords, and they are in the key of C minor. You can see here how the E flat and the C makes it the C minor chord. These two also make it a minor key. These two also make it the minor key. So you can see though we're definitely working in C minor, but then I do switch in the breakdown to almost like a major sounding thing, and this is something I really love to do in music, is I do switch between the relative minor and the major in songs, and this allows me to have a darker, more moodier feel to the intro of a song, but then a more happy, melodic, uplifting section in the middle, and then I can go back out to the more somber, melancholic type feel at the end. So I'm going to play for you guys now the main chords that were used for the track in the main drop section. I'll just got the right synth settings so you can hear them clearly. Here we go. So that's using the notes from E flat major, which relative minor to that is C minor, which is 3 semitones down. That's always the rule. If you go 3 semitones down from a major key, you always end up at the relative minor, and those two keys will share the exact same notes, but the way that they're played just feels different. So you could argue that we never leave C minor. You could argue that we're always in E flat. Whichever way, these are the chords that I selected. Very typical Craig Connelly chord sequences. This one's just bar per 1 bar per chord change. Has a little bit of a feel to Lights Around the World and This Life. That's the kind of feel I was going for with this demo. And I'm going to play for you guys now the main melody. Now this is the initial melody. The record release which you've heard may sound different to this, basically because I actually did a bit of rewriting, and this is key to doing demos, is that when you write a demo for a vocalist, the first thing you want to bear in mind is that you want it to be able to change quite a lot, because the vocalist might come back and go, oh, I've got an idea for this section, that section, or I can do something here and there, can we change the key a little bit here, or, so you want to be really flexible. You don't want to have a rigid, finished, super hyper-produced track with no room for change. That's going to trip you up a lot, and I always find the best vocals is where I am totally capable of changing anything to make them fit. That being said, is that I made this riff to begin with, this little plucky thing, very super simple, but then for the main track release it does sound different. It's more of a 16th up, but by that point I'd already committed to the vocal and we were in a happy place and everything worked. So anyway, without waffling on, I'm going to play for you guys the main melody. Okay, so that's the main melody, and I want to just talk to you how it's constructed. I will do it just by moving this MIDI part over here so we can just focus our attention on these notes. But basically the bottom note always is following the bass, so we start with B flat, C, A flat, G sharp, and E flat. And I always try to think of a nice combination above the top, but it's never super complicated. Like, for example, I'm just using the third there. From the chord of B flat, I'm using D, which is the third note in the triad of the B flat chord. Again, a third again. E flat is a third above C in the chord of C minor. So C, E flat, G would make up the chord of C minor, and then A flat, G sharp is there, and I just switch between second and the third in the scale, and then again E flat here. We're looking at a fifth above and switching between those two. So it's not really complicated combinations. I'm not like, you know, doing really super complicated things. I always think that some of the most natural sounding progressions are where you use notes from that particular chord's triad or in and around that range. I don't do things that are too complicated. I used to, but not anymore. I find like you can have more catchier riffs if you just keep it simple. So as you can see here, it's super simple. I just switch around these either thirds or fifths above the bass notes and play along with probably my keyboard very badly, you know, whatever sounds natural. So that is our plucky riff. There is a counter melody in the tune, which not only is in the demo, but is also in the finished thing. So I'll play that for you guys now. Now it appears it's this track here we're going to be looking at. It appears here in different parts of the track and works over pretty much any chord sequence. And that's a very unique thing about a counter melody, is you don't necessarily have to have it like a fixed thing where it only works over a certain, you know, chord sequence or bar in your tune. The reason why it works so well is because it's so minimal. I mean, it's literally just, I'll choose a better colour than that. It's just 3 notes, and the 3 notes are E flat, F, and B flat, and they work perfectly in the key of C minor, and they also work perfectly in the key of E flat, so they do resonate really well. And it's just a little 1-bar hook, and it's not a really long complicated thing. It's just these 3 notes in this little pattern, and it repeats over and over and over and over again, and they do create good hook and atmosphere within a dance tune, trance tune, house tune, whatever. Sometimes the simpler melodies over a nice chord sequence is all you need. Anyway, I'm going to play this for you guys here, and you'll see that this is a sustained C note. These are intro chords, but just sustained over the root note of the key of the tune, and this is our main happy chords here. And you'll hear how the counter melody, it just works perfectly over both. So it's a bit filtered, so I'll probably play around with that so you can hear it clearly. But anyway, here we go. So there you go, it's just the 3 notes, and with a nice catchy pattern it can work very well over different sections of the tune. All I do here, further up into the drop section, it works over the pluck as well, and I just have it an octave higher. So it's just 1 octave higher to create a bit more space. Have a listen to this. So there we go, that's basically the main musical parts within the tune, and as I mentioned at the start of this little video, I do just throw them into the session, just make arrangement as quickly as possible. In terms of my sound selection and arrangement, I generally just use, kick drums and claps and snares and loops I've used before. It's very demo-based sounds. I'm not focusing too much on, how they sound. I mean, this demo selection here is just a kick I've used a few times, and a hat and a snare. Anything just to give it pace and move along. Now, the reason why this is important is because I'd rather get the vocal in and have all my parts in order before committing to super high detailed drums, because some parts might need tuning or changing. So anyway, that's how you would approach doing demo drums. The bass in this, there's a couple of rolling basses in there. They're not really that complicated. I do more work on these in the actual arrangement of the tune, the full finished thing, but you can obviously just use a very simple 16th pattern just to get the idea across. Now, the arrangement is key in terms of providing it for a vocalist. I always think that you should have really quite open areas where the vocalist can concentrate their energy on rather than super hyper complicated things. So this section here is where the verse is, and it's 16 bars long, and all I have is the pads in there, the kick and the bass. I take all the other drums out, there's no other counter melodies or melodies, and this is so the vocalist can just focus on the chords of the tune and get their ideas in place. Same for the chorus. The chorus is actually here. I'll put a little marker in. In this section here, we just have bass, chords. The counter melodies there, but it's quite filtered, and some strings, so they can get their emotive ideas down. I always find if I try to send to a vocalist just a drop section and say write a song over the top of a melody that's already playing there with full furious drums, it's going to become harder for them. So always bear that in mind. I keep my sections super simple, so when communicating with the vocalist, I'll say, I just want 16 bars for a verse, 16 bars for a chorus, and just focus your energy on those 2 points. If you send a demo track to a vocalist and just say write a vocal over the top of that, they will get it won't be as easy for them. They may get lost along the way. They may not be sure where you want them to write the vocal. So always quote bar numbers and make sure it's relative to your session. So if you're bouncing this track out from there, you say put this into your sequencer, the chorus is at 73 bar 73 for 16 bars, they will always get that right. But if you say, I want a chorus in the breakdown, they might start it there, they might start it there, they might start it there, they might start it there. Make it easy for them, and you'll have a much better experience with your vocalist that way. Same with the verse here. I will just say to them, please start your verse at bar 25 and write it for 16 bars. Taking up to bar 41. So I'll play for you guys here, just leading into the verse. You can see how stark and empty that section is, and there's just enough music there for them to do some writing. And that's it. That's all I would put in there. There's a beat for them to sing along to. Nothing's going to be, in their vocal range, so it's not going to distract from their voice. And there's just some nice pads and chords in there for them to play along with. Same with the chorus section. So I'll play you from here, and you can hear just how it's just the chords. I mean, you've heard these chords earlier in this demonstration. So yeah, I'll let you hear what these sound like. So yeah, really stark and empty, but the chords are there, and you will get a really good emotive response from that. So yeah, and that is just a really quick look at my demo for Keep Me Believing. It was originally called Pyramid. I've no idea why. But yeah, we have our demo now. You can export that, send it to a vocalist, tell them exactly where the vocal part should be, and then maybe even just say a note saying once we've got those 2 solid verse and chorus parts in there, You know, you could also try, say, a pre-chorus at bar 57 or ad-libs over 105, you know, wherever you want, maybe some other optional ideas, put that into there as well. But keep it super simple, don't overcomplicate your vocal demo, and you'll have great success. Alright guys, so we're now looking at my final finished version of Keep Me Believing. This is at the stage where everything was produced, arranged into stems and groups, and after this it would have been taken into a completely clean session and arranged into, say, probably 8 or 9 stereo stems constructed from the synths, bass, drums, pads, and vocals, and then I do a final mix in there. That's covered in great detail in the full course from Sonic Academy, which you can get from their website. But for now, I'm going to give you a really quick rundown of how I produced my final tune. So from the last video, you can see that this has been expanded quite a lot. There's many layers been put into this tune for various reasons. There's lots of groups going on as well. I'm a big fan of using groups, but I'm going to break down each thing for you individually now. We'll start with the drums. So my process for making drums is I use a program called Machine heavily. I'm going to give you a quick example in this video of how I use Machine. On top of using you know, single hits like snares and claps, a lot of the way I process my loops that I've collected over the years is using this, where I can slice it up in Machine onto this grid. I get a 16th note MIDI note for each slice, and I can control the velocity. On top of that, I can also add envelopes and filters and effects, compression, a variety of things really. I can make the loop more unique to me. I don't just like using just loops straight out of sample packs. I like to create them and mess around with them myself. So I'll just go through from one example of show you what I've done on this particular loop. It sounds like this at the moment. Using Machine, I'm able to put an envelope onto each slice of that. So without the envelope, it would have sounded like this. And also, using the velocity here, I often select a particular number of the slices which I want to be a little bit quieter or louder. And rather than control them with LFO tools, I do kind of pull and push these up or down, say if I wanted those as well. So this gives me full control over my loops and percussion. I'll show you here another example. As you can see, there's a lot more, a little bit of LFO2 side chaining on there, but there's a lot more velocity control. There's more envelope in here, and also some compression and drive. So I'll go through some of these. First one is the filter, so without that on, and with it on. Really cool thing about Machine is you can use an LFO or an envelope to control any of these effects. That's a really cool thing you can do. Also, without the envelope on as well. It's actually a really nasty loop, but when it's sliced up and use envelope control and velocity, you can soon make it your own. And that's a lot more well behaved and how I like it. This particular loop here is probably a similar story. Some great amount of velocity control there, and then I just put it without an envelope on. Small things and really simple things, but that is how I do my drums. I don't like to just throw loops in there. I like to make them quite custom. So listening to the drum mix as a whole, sounds like this. I use a snare and a clap together. And there's a shaker. Some loops here all together. Offbeat hi-hat. I also use some really cool modulated echo sounds here. So this is an echo sound in Pro Tools. Yeah, you can use filter freakover and echo, and that creates some nice modulation. But like I said, I'll go over this, you know, on all the processing in great detail in the full course, so be sure to check that out. Moving on to bass, I use a variety of bass synthesizers. I wouldn't say I just use one in particular. Serum is my sub sound on this particular track. I have some bass lines from Massive, Diva, and one from my Moog as well. I'll play these for you guys right now. So some of them are like the main sounds, so like this is an anchoring sound, the Moog sound. And then you got a sound like this from Diva, which has got a lot of resonance effects on it to give it some texture. And I also use velocity control on this as well. So you'll see here, put the velocity sticks on. All these velocity sticks are slightly different. I make a pattern from them, often with bass lines, and I use the velocity control things like filter cutoff or filter envelopes. So that velocity there will be controlled. We'll be controlling something within the synthesizer to give it a bit more texture and dynamics. On Diva, which one was that actually? Just so we can see. Yeah, there we go. So the velocity there is controlling both envelopes, and the envelope is controlling the filter, so it does make it sound like it jumps around a little bit. It just gives it a little bit more of a lively feel rather than a static sound. Static sounds are good when you want to create kind of like a baseline bass, like, you know, something really solid like a foundation, but then sounds which modulate and move are much better when you want to create texture. Okay, sub sound, it's pretty simple. It's just from Serum. I think I've used the same sub for about 100 tunes now. Just a patch I created years ago. I think it's actually just called Nice Sub. Yeah, Nice Sub. Sub Nice. I made that myself like years ago, and I just stick with it. It's just a saw wave, no unison, a couple of octaves down, and a good Moog model filter to 12 dB per pole. I think it has 2-pole filter on there. Just creates a nice tone. I mean, there's not really anything going on. A touch of EQ, and then there's a little bit of processing on the channel as well. Renaissance sax and a little bit of this EQ. It's quite like it. It's quite easy to kind of find the right bass frequencies with this because you're limited with choice over what frequencies to choose. Just use it as kind of like fader bank. Okay. Next up, we've done drums and bass. Let's talk about the synth sounds. Now, since the last part of this video and the first demo, I actually made the riffs slightly differently. I'm going to change the color of these so we can see them easily. Make that blue. I'm going to show you the melody now as it's changed. It used to be a plucked melody, but now it starts there on that line. It's now a 16th pattern like this, and it's not syncopated. It just goes on the offbeat. So every got a kick there, 1, 2, 3, 4 kicks. Like the top note is in between them, and I've just followed the same note pattern as I did before with the other Pluck, but this time it's like changing the rhythm, and it's expanded quite a bit. I wanted to do this to make it kind of differentiate from some of the other tunes I've made recently in the last few years, and this kind of gives it a different feel. But anyway, I'll put this on screen for you guys, and I'll play through it. Hopefully I can get the whole thing on screen. Yeah, just about. There you go. I'll play through it so you can hear it. So the couple of the changes there, it goes to higher notes at the end of each section, and they do slightly different rundowns. I like these passing notes quite a lot. Like, I don't focus the whole melody on them, but every now and again a little passing note just gives it a little bit of flavour, a little bit of a flick at the end. So yeah, I go into this again in much more detail in the full course, but that's how and why I changed the melody. The pads, I just make sure my pads stay the same as the melody, so you can see the notes there are the same. time. I feel when you have different pads to your main melody and you try and mix them in the tune, you can end up with a lot of headaches because there's harmonics being generated there from different note combinations which just will not glue together with the melody itself. Especially with trance, it's like a wall of sound, so you might find yourself having great difficulty to mix that down. Anyway, some of the synthesizers I use, again, I've recently started using Diva. Really good for like classic old Roland, JP, Jupiter type sounds. That's like, you can see, if you're familiar with Roland synthesizers, that's like a Jupiter style, envelopes, oscillator selection, Jupiter style filter and envelopes. Sounds really good. I use Super 8 from Native Instruments as well, good for plucks and basses. Like if you want a synthesizer which is just super simple, you don't want to like get into like too complicated things, you just want a couple of envelopes and a filter. Yeah, Super 8 sounds really good. It sounds like it's from the 80s as well, no surprise there. Serum, this is my Super Saw patch that I made myself. I'll go into detail in the course of how I make this, but they are like classic JP 8000 waveforms, which I imported there, and then which is kind of my own kind of setup, and then another Diva there for more JP 8000 style sounds. I do make most of the sounds myself. Sometimes you use presets, but I always modify them to make them fit. I don't think there's a single preset in the world which will just go into a tune without without some degree of change. Okay, on the intro, on this particular final track, I did use my acid from a Virus and a Moog, but I've created the exact same sound in the full tutorial using Serum. You can make kind of acids on any synth. I wanted the course to be accessible to everybody, so I didn't just focus on hardware, for example. Here I'm using a really good Sonic Academy synthesizer called Anna 2. I used 3 instances of it here to create this intro Pluck sound, which didn't appear in the demo, but I felt like it created more like a moody space for the intro. Similar to kind of what I did with the Black Hole tune, one of my very first tunes. Anyway, I'll play this melody for you here. So that's 2 presets which I've modified myself and used plugins on them for filtering and whatnot, and then a sound I made myself on Anna, just using a sine wave, going into one of the really nice filter settings here with some delay and echo. It's pretty simple stuff, but I think the layering of those 3 sounds works well together. More instances of Anna are used here for intro pads. This is more dreamy, spacey stuff. I feel when you use pads in an intro, you can get away with being more like sound designer-ish type pads, really interesting sounds, whereas when on a drop section, it's all about creating that power and size, so I tend to find that the Super Saw pads and big pads sound better there. But anyway, I'll play for you a couple of these pads in the intro. This one in particular is really nice. It's kind of like a modulated pad. There's almost like a melody within the pad. And as it's filtering open here, you can hear the sounds coming through. It's like an arpeggiator. So yeah, there's a massive pad there as well, just for scope and size. Just add a bit of depth there to it. In terms of the arrangement, it is longer than the demo. Obviously I have a beat intro because I'm a DJ myself, so I do like to have a DJ style intro on there. And then 16 bars, the plucks come in. And then there's another 16 bars. There's like I call it like a build down. It's not a breakdown, but there's like a section where we can just transition from this bit here to where the vocal is going to be. The vocal actually starts. I'm going to open up this vocal channel here. So we have pluck for 16 bars, build down for 8 bars, 8 bar just section of pads and beats, and then the vocal starts. Well, I'll play this for you, for you guys now. Okay, so the verse is 16 bars. So after the verse finishes there, I go down there for 8 bars into the breakdown. And then I have to do a transition between the minor C chords at the start into the more major section. So I'll play that for you now. And that is done using something like this, where these are the pads here. You can see the MIDI. We're sustaining on a C chord with the chord top notes from the intro section on the top, but then they switch into these fuller chords, which are the major sounds. But anyways, here, if you can hear the transition here, I'll go from the end of the verse into where the chorus starts here. As I mentioned earlier, that counter melody is rendered up now as this piano track, which is there as audio. That runs straight through that whole section, and even through the minor section and into the major section. It just works. It just kind of creates that nice atmosphere and feeling. You get that switch of emotion here, where you're in a minor section into the major section, and then when the vocal comes in, it goes full euphoric. Talking of vocals, I've known Megan a few years now. She did a track with me called Lights Around the World, if you're familiar with my work. I released that around 2 years ago, and I wanted to do another track with her. So I just hit her up with this demo, and yeah, she always comes up with the goods, and she's an incredible singer, so the vocal didn't really need much work at all. There's some EQing, and I do a lot of work with the timing. I'm a very particular with the timing of a vocal, so I do line that up quite quickly to the grid, and there's some good effects sends there as well, all covered in detail in the Full Sonic Academy course, but I'll play for you guys through this chorus section right now. So I use the main vocal, and then I've also got a double track. This is like echo sections, so these have been rendered into place. Like I call them spot echoes, where I'll put an echo on fully wet and then render it into place. So then I have like more of a special effect. I'm not having to put that onto the actual main track. I have a double track here, and then these are really nice harmonies. And yeah, once I've got the main vocal in time, I tend to be able to find the timing of the double tracking and the harmony really quickly using sight. I'm using Pro Tools here, guys, but hopefully, anything I'm teaching you on this course, it can be applied to any sequencer or DAW you choose to use. Ableton and Logic, Cubase, they all have the same features. They've just got slightly different names. So I use Pro Tools warp function here to get everything in time with the grid. Anyway, so that is a little touch on the vocal. Once the chorus happens, I could start to filter up the main lead. And then here we head into the build-up. Bring back the piano, counter line, counter melody there. then it kicks back in. I'm going to play through this with you guys and listen along. I bring the vocal back here at this section and also the counter melody. I didn't want to use the full vocal, so I just focused on using the believe word with the harmonies. Here it comes. At the end here, instead of having a breakdown, I wanted to kind of keep the beat and bass in there, do something a little bit different. So I'll keep the believe vocal going and bring the piano back. The outro is just constructed of some of the parts I used in the intro, so the acid lines, some of the automation going in the opposite direction, drums, effects, whatnot, just to kind of give it that DJ style outro, which I enjoy. Okay guys, thank you very much for tuning into this very, very quick look at my track Keep Me Believing with Mega McDuffee. It's available right now on all the usual download and streaming portals. If you're interested in hearing more about how I created this track in great detail, there is a huge course which I've constructed with the help of the Sonic Academy team. It's available now through Sonic Academy's website, and it's broken into chapters. We cover everything in detail, from the demo, the writing process, musical theory, synthesis, sound design, mixing, mastering, engineering and processing a vocal. It's the whole works. Every inch of this track is covered in extreme detail. So if that interests you, head over to Sonic Academy and check out the full course. Thank you very much guys for tuning in, and I'll see you all very soon.
Thanks everyone for watching. We really appreciate all the support from you guys. If you love this video, then smash a like, and if you want to be notified about new videos, hit the subscribe and notification buttons. Peace!